Hi everybody, I want to talk today about the next assignment that we're going to be working on. We are going to be discussing the Illuminated Manuscript Project. That's the name of the assignment. For this project, you're going to be inspired by the original illuminated manuscripts, which were medieval documents. They were typically religious books, prayer books, where the artist or the monk would design the page. Now, in those days, we're talking about pre-Gutenberg days, so there were no printed press copies of biblical books. So everything had to be done by hand. And certainly with religious texts like the Bible, they're highly important. So they wanted to make them as special as they could. In addition to being handwritten documents, they wanted to make them beautiful objects that people would hold sacred. Now, we're talking about a world where there wasn't a lot of books. Books were scarce and extremely, well, they would have been very expensive for whoever could afford them. And it was the only means of communication towards a mass audience. So they wanted to make the manuscripts as beautiful as they could. So they designed them with gold leaf, which is what we're seeing with this image here. They flourished, they added flourishes, such as the ornamentation that you're seeing around the pages here with animal and plant life and abstract designs. And all of this was to highlight the pages. So this is an example of a prayer book. Here's another page here where you can see they've added all of these sort of abstract, beautiful pink and blue flourishes around the edges. And these are sort of a framing device for the central text that they'll be using that's in the middle. And we're seeing little figures popping in and out. So a lot of these illuminated manuscripts can be very playful. They can add in animals and they can be funny, have little jokes in them. So I encourage you just to do a search for illuminated manuscripts, and you'll find a lot of really interesting, fun pages that can inspire you for this assignment. So you're probably thinking at this point, so we're going to have to design a biblical page. Well, no, this is just the inspiration. This is where I got the project idea from. So you're actually going to use whatever text, quote, poem, whatever you choose to work with, you're allowed to do that. So we're going to jump ahead now. Now, this is actually one of my student projects. So you are allowed to use, it's very similar to the Illuminated manuscripts, you are allowed to use traditional material like this Bible verse from Romans. And this student did a really nice job of sort of being inspired by those pages with using acrylic or watercolor, ink, and handwritten elements that sort of have that calligraphy look to them. So you can go the traditional route, but I'm going to show you some examples of students who went another way and did something a little bit more contemporary. So certainly this one's a lot more contemporary, right? This is Sailors Fighting in the Dance Hall, if you can read that. The bottom of the screen is a little shaded out. I'm not sure what the issue with that is. But you can hopefully get the idea and see it. So this is very different than the Illuminated manuscripts, right? So the font or the text they used looks very contemporary, hand done, very street art, graffiti art. But one of the things I like that they did was the S in the upper left-hand corner is still sort of following the rules of illuminated manuscripts, where the S is very ornate and overly designed. And that's typically the way illuminated manuscripts would work. So the first letter of the page of the gospel would be very designed, intricate, and the artist or the monk would put a lot of time to emphasize that first letter. So if you're kind of feeling like, well, there's almost too many options here, what do I do? That's a good way to start. think about with the quote that you're using, how can I make that first letter stand out? Now, you don't have to do that. I'm just giving you an inspirational point to start with. So this is a David Bowie lyric. So this is a very contemporary subject matter. It's a song lyric. And again, they used all sorts of materials for this project. I remember the student who did this, his name was Matt. He actually, I think he took stickers, got some stickers from the post office, and he spray painted them gold. And then he cut them out with scissors, and then he pasted them down on the page. So the letters in the middle there where it says in the, those are actually spray painted stickers. And then it looks like fighting, he used a stencil, like a spray paint stencil on that as well. So you guys have used spray paint for the last project. So you're welcome to use any materials you want. Ink, pens. At the beginning of the semester, I told you that on the optional supply list was paints. So this would be the time that you could use those paints. Bring the paints in and make something for your quote. All right, let's go ahead and look at some other ones. So this is a little bit of a longer bit of text here. If we can actually read it, I'll try to give it a shot here. For nearly 40 years, this story has given faithful service to the young in heart, and time has been powerless to put its kindly philosophy out of fashion. And then it goes on. So this is actually, you may recognize, this is the first page from the book The Wizard of Oz. Not the movie, but the book that it was based on. And again, they've used the Illuminated Manuscript form where the F over here on the left-hand side is like repeated over and over. You can see where my cursor's moving. The F is repeated and emphasized with different patterned papers, which you can get at any arts and crafts store. They'll have scrapbooking patterned papers. And then the F connects to the OR, so we've got for nearly 40 years, on and on. And that is the way that they did it. I highly recommend for this project that you not do any more text than this. For the most part, I've been doing this project for 13 years, having students do it. I think that the less text tends to have more impact. If you're doing a project that has a ton of text in it, like you pick something out from like Lord of the Rings and you're doing a big chunk of text, you're going to spend all your time trying to copy it hand letter. So I recommend you keep it short and sweet for your quote or for whatever text that you decide to do. If you look around the outer edge of this person's project, you can see that they actually cut out, using the X-Acto knife, they cut out black paper. They stippled it with, I guess, probably a paint pen to get those little white dots. And then red was put underneath it to give it a see-through border. So that was a ton of really detailed work. It gives it a nice element of detail that I think really shows, really comes through, really shows really well. The paper here, although you can't tell from my photograph that I took, this is semi-transparent paper, maybe like vellum or something like that. So if you actually held this project up to the light or up to the window, light would pass through those words and give them a literal illumination. So I thought that was a cool touch. Not entirely something that you have to do, but this is a good project to just experiment and find new ways to approach it. So this one is a very different one. This is where the student went in a street art, graffiti art style letters. So I don't know if you can read the top there. Can you read this across here? It's almost illegible, but they've used this really free-flowing graffiti style text. It actually says Outkast, which is the band from Atlanta, the rap duo Outkast. And that's what that says. And then the lyrics are actually used within the central element here. Some of it I really can't even read. Makes me feel, shake your soul. So got Big Boy, Outkast. Really cool piece. Again, they used marker, paint pen, I believe. They cut the elements out. They used Bristol board, which you guys have used. They cut the elements out, placed it onto the black paper, and that helped it stand out, really pop out on the page. These are drawn elements that they used, so you can, if you have any drawing background, you can certainly bring that in with this project. And I really like this piece. It was probably about 11 by 14. That's the size that I would prefer you to work with. You can use any surface you want. If you like the canvases, you can do that. If you prefer to work with the Bristol board or any heavy set or paper, that was going to work great for this assignment. Anything that will hold up and withstand gluing, cutting, pasting, all that sort of thing. Let's move ahead, and here's another one where they did, I brought this one because they used primarily paint. The sea is my home. Very simple phrase, but I like the painterly quality of the letters, especially like the little sea, I guess, plant coming in here in the lower right-hand corner. That one really gives it a little bit of cool pop to it. Okay. So this one I brought in because even though I just said you should use a sturdy material, this student actually used a tissue paper, which you can get at any craft store. And they made it have like a real kind of diaphanous quality to it, where it feels like very light. And I think it works, like this intentional crinkled paper look to it. I think it kind of works in an interesting way. And I don't remember the quote. This has been many years. It says winter, autumn, summer. So they're going with a seasonal theme. And then they've got their words and their quote working around the edge to kind of highlight everything. They sewed like literally with a, they sewed in wire. So you can't tell because we're looking at a flat image. But if you saw this in 3 dimensions, you would see that there's wire that's been stitched over the letters, the every season down there. So I've had people just do all sorts of things in terms of materials. Feel free to have fun with it. Bring in any of those things that you want to. Speaking of unusual materials, this student used metal as their background. So you can see that they've got the letters that they cut out and they glued it to a metal sheet. These are hand-cut elements as well. For this particular project, if you have any kind of interesting textured paper, that works really well. If you go to a art supply store or a craft store, they're going to have scrapbooking paper. This isn't a scrapbooking project, but you can certainly use the paper for that. I've had people use origami paper, everything you can think of. If you can go down to an art supply store like Dick Blick that has a lot of different papers to choose from, you're going to have a lot of options there. But any sort of art supply craft store will have that if that's an interesting thing for you to work with. Okay, this one is a song lyric. I show this one because I like the hand-done element a lot. I also show this one as a little bit of a warning, though. If you can see that the letters are very hard to read. So it says, Savior, so hear my voice, remind you not to bleed, I am here. So I can read it, but, as an instructor evaluating this piece, I wish those letters stood out a little bit more. The background is more dynamic than the letters are. So I really like the S. They've done this Illuminated Manuscript technique we've been talking about where they emphasize the first letter. And I love the hands coming in. I love the drippy spray painty effect and all the texture and the flames. But I just wish those letters popped off the page a little bit more. Maybe they should have or could have gone with a lighter color with their paint. Just figured out a way to help those letters come off the page a little bit more. So think about that. Think about legibility. How easy is it to read my project? Does it pop off the page? Does it feel like it's coming forward instead of receding into the background? So a really nice piece, and I don't mean to pick on it because I like it a lot, but I do think that there are a couple of things you need to keep in mind when you're approaching this project, and text readability is one of those things. All right, let's move ahead here, and that actually might be it. Okay, so that's my examples that I've got for you. If you look at the handout, you'll see all the information that you need to know. 11 by 14 is the project size, but you can shift that a little bit if you need to. So if the project ends up being like 13 by 13 or 12 by 12, that's okay. I just want you to work a little bit larger than a typical notebook page size. That's my goal, is to go to scale up your ideas. So keep that in mind. Any quote is going to work for me. Again, I recommend brevity. Keep your quote short. Don't feel like you have to do an entire chapter from Harry Potter or something like that. And you can use absolutely any materials that you want to. And think about the materials that you've already used for this class. So you've used spray paint, you've used X-Acto knife, you've shown that you can cut paper really well. If you like painting and drawing, bring that into it. But go to your strength and go to what you think would be interesting for your project. Good luck. If you have any questions at all, absolutely feel free to contact me and I will write you right back.